Welcome to In the Zone. I'm Craig Zimmerman, and with me today is somebody with an official title. Captain Nicole Christie, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So I think this is the first interview I've done with a husband and wife. We did your husband here a couple weeks ago, James, and James suggested I call you, so we'll get you in here.
Oh, that's nice.
So, you know, most of the people I talk to, as I tell them, there's no secret questions, there's no tough questions, it's going to be easy. And if need be, Paul or Reed in the room there will edit if necessary.
Okay.
You were not born and raised in, say, St. Clair, Maine area, but you were born and raised where?
I was born and raised in Fraser.
Okay.
And I always had a love and passion for the water. And as I got to go boating as a young adult, I started seeing more and more Lake St. Clair further out, Harson's Island, Fairhaven, Algonac, up this way, and I just love it.
Okay, good to hear it. Give me a background, mother, father, siblings.
So my dad restored a 32-foot wood boat, it's a Owens, and he had another runabout that was a project boat. So my first beginning of boating was wooden boats, and my dad restored cars also.
Now,
So
an Owens is like a cabin cruiser from the 60s?
yeah, they're like Egg Harbors or Vikings or cruisers, cabin cruisers, a fly bridge.
Yep.
So he did that with my mom. My mom did all the upholstery and the soft stuff, or things that she could do, and she's really good with stain and paint and things like that. So they did that project together. But they did a full restoration. We used it a little bit, and then they shored it up in the backyard.
Okay. Yeah.
So
which is typically
it
the case.
didn't continue on.
Okay. Any siblings?
My brother, and he has worked with me on boats. The beginning of my career was start off working at a gas dock where I met captains, and I learned to wash boats, and I learned, I liked what the captains did, and then it evolved into local work like boat detailing, then restoration. My brother worked with me in detailing and restoration, but continued on, with a college degree as an engineer. Continued that way, and I continued with a college degree, but took captaining beyond my degree and further.
What's your college degree in?
So it's fashion design, and I had a business. Well, my boat business was very strong at the time, and I had like 5 employees or so, where I wanted to get my job in fashion, start my career, and I did at Carhartt. And I still managed employees before and after work and jobs, and it went well, but I still had more passions of being outdoors and more things. So I got asked to do custom swimwear, and I had a bikini business doing custom swimwear, and that went really well, but it always continued on the captain path and the boat path. And as soon as I got my fashion design degree, I applied to Sunseeker in the UK because I love international travel, and I wanted to work on yachts, and so I applied in the upholstery department.
Okay.
Well, soft goods, canvas.
Building Sunseeker yachts and boats?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it just kept evolving. I even went down to Fort Lauderdale and applied for yacht design. It all kept evolving, and in the end, just all the boats keep pushing through, and I've just captained. I got my first license here, and
how long of a process is getting a captain's license generally?
So it's about a 2-week course, but you have to have a certain amount of sea time that can accumulate to 5 years or more.
Sure.
And then I went south and I got another license. So I have a big part of education in maritime.
Okay.
And quite a few. I have 2 captain's licenses of different size, and then I have 14 certificates. That's a really big deal when working on boats that insurance companies require that.
Sure. Okay. Let me back up from something you just said. Carhartt. Now, back in what I call the day, Carhartt was basically for workers of construction workers. Heavy clothing. But Carhartt has sort of gone even into fashion and more popular for just regular, everyday people wearing Carhartt. So what did you do there?
So Carhartt really expanded, and they have Carhartt Europe, and they have Carhartt here, like local.
Yep.
And they're creating a very fashionable line. So I was in the product development side. So the designer would design what they would like, and I would put a tech package together, often 30 pages or so, of every detail, like the stitch, the fabric, and then I'd have fit sessions and prototypes as we would see it through into the season to the final product, and then we'd order quantities.
How long did you work there?
A little over a year.
Okay. Because that whole product line has expanded tremendously from what it originally started as.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Okay.
They have a lot of really nice stuff.
So now back to your captainship. Explain how many different levels there are of getting a license to be a captain.
Yeah, so the first license that you could get just about everywhere is one test, and then your sea time shows which level license you'll get.
Okay.
So the first test can be for 6 passengers, or 25 ton, 50 ton, or 100 ton. So I took that and I got my 100 ton. And then there's the 200 ton, or there's another level and another level.
Now when they talk about ton, that's the weight of the yacht.
Yeah, it's a certain calculation of displacement of water in the hull.
Okay.
So you can bypass the 200 and go to the next level, which is a 500, 1600 ton license. So again, one test, but your sea time shows which level license you'll get. So I have the 500 ton. I'm very close to the 1600, so I've been accumulating my sea time to submit for that, which I won't test again, and I just submit the time.
So in general, for the maybe viewer that doesn't know what a 500 ton would be, on average, what size of a yacht would that be?
So often it's about up to 170 feet or so. It's the make of the boat and the way it's the builder spec'd it, really.
Okay. So then different size boats obviously are different tonnage.
So then there's another level of license. It's the 3,000 unlimited. Same thing, you test, and then your sea time shows which level you get. That would be more for freighters or very, very large yachts. And to work on the Great Lakes freighters, I would think that you would have to have some time aboard, like not just jumping in with that license,
first mate, second
but
mate.
understanding that program first.
Sure. Okay. So what is the largest type of boat or yacht that you've captained?
So 164 foot I have maneuvered and docked. My friend was the captain of that. I was the temporary mate. But recently I did this dinner boat. It's 120 feet long and it's 5 decks. It's huge in volume. It looks like a big building.
Yeah.
And it's a type of dinner boat that has the max amount of passengers, 350 passengers pretty much.
Sure.
But that will vary due to the Coast Guard inspection of that area. But
where was that located?
So it was in Chelsea Piers, New York.
Okay.
And I picked it up and we brought her up and around the St. Lawrence Seaway and home to Cleveland. And I'm the agent of the St. Lawrence Seaway. There's 2 for the mega yacht category.
Okay.
And I'm only one of 2, and of the 2, I'm the only one licensed to drive them. And the other guy's really awesome. He's a sailor, and he speaks French, and a big portion of that is French.
Right.
But I've made good contacts over time that I can do it.
So when you're coming in with a new boat, yacht, for whatever you want to call it, and you come into a new spot, I know just using my 28-foot, boat on the river, it becomes difficult with winds, currents. So how do you do it for the first time?
Yeah, I have to do a lot of heavy research ahead of time. I communicate, we call it local knowledge. We talk to the harbor master, we talk to anyone we can ahead of time. Sometimes I go there first and I look, and before I depart, I go to the shore and I look for the forecast versus what I'm seeing, and we feel it out and we slow it down, feel the current, feel the wind, test all the steering, and then for that dinner boat, I had a wind finder installed. And we had gusts up to 36, where we couldn't go to the dock, and we had to wait and just keep up and down until we found our window to get in.
Yeah. For people that have never even taken a boat anywhere, especially like in a river like the St. Clair River, wind and current is a big issue.
Yeah, and being from this area, which includes water all the way down through the St. Lawrence Seaway is we know there's always a downbound current against us. And we know in the spring there's always logs and debris.
Yep.
Or bad weather and storms, log and debris. So we know some of that local knowledge also, like to get through it.
Have you done many trips up and, say, as a captain up and down the river with yachts?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, all sizes. I've did a pontoon, someone looking to move here, and I've did bigger boats. I just did one, it was 88 feet. A ship came in from Fort Lauderdale with yachts on it, and I unloaded one. They
James put that
craned
on
it off.
Facebook, I think. You or
Yeah.
James had put it on Facebook. Pretty fascinating. Watch that roughly 80-foot boat come off of a freighter.
Yeah, they hoisted it off. We cleared Customs and Immigration and brought it to the U.S., cleared in, and you have to get all systems online, get everything running, and check everything.
Now, when a yacht like that comes in off of a freighter, do you have anything to do with the customs and all that process?
Yeah, it's all through me, because then when I'm receiving, I have to do that end of it.
Okay. So coming in, you had to do a lot of paperwork set up before it got here.
It's more of an in-person thing.
Okay. And where do you go for that?
We show our documents and our passports. It's just like an in-person meeting.
Okay. And so they want to know where the boat came from, where it's been, obviously. Where do you do that? You did it in Detroit?
So we did that over in Sarnia in the port, and then we did it over in Port Huron. And we got picked up on a shuttle boat to be brought over to do that, just to straight board the boat.
Sure.
We didn't even come through the gate on that side. We were just in the port dealing with the boats.
So then how long of a process bringing that boat in? Was that a whole day affair?
It was about a half a day, but you're waiting on wind, primarily of them unloading, wind and weather. And we unloaded in between two storms, thunder, lightning, dark clouds, rain, and it worked.
Coming up the St. Lawrence Seaway and all the way through, say, to the lakes, say, to Lake Huron, is there any one spot that's more difficult as a captain than another?
Yeah, as you start funneling in, the current is stronger and stronger, and some boats aren't that fast, and you have like 6 knots against you, and that can really slow you down. So as you get towards Quebec, it's really funneling, and that's kind of when the salt water and the fresh water stop mixing. Tide starts to dissipate. But in Montreal, the current is so strong. We got down to 2.5 knots trying to make it into the marina.
Okay. And then you've also got the locks in the Seaway portion. I think there's 10 or 12?
Yeah, so for the St. Lawrence, there's 7 or more for that portion. And then there's the Welland Canal that there's 8.
Right. So is that tedious going through there, just because you've got one to the next, to the next, to the next, not a lot of, say, real estate between them?
Well, the first portion from Montreal to Lake Ontario, there is space. The Welland Canal is one after another after another.
Right.
But when you do the Erie Canal system, so when we leave the Great Lakes and go through the Welland Canal into the Erie Canal system, just to get out to the Hudson River and the East Coast, that's 39 locks.
39.
So it's a lot of work, and takes us about 4 days to do the whole lock system that way.
Sure.
But your boat has to clear a certain height.
There's a lot. That's a lot to deal with. Is there any one part or place you go through that you like, just enjoy more than another? Or are you not able to enjoy the scenery? Because Montreal's got to be pretty.
Oh, we
pretty
enjoy
nice.
the scenery a lot. We carry this DSLR camera, and we get the lighthouses and like everything that we see that's beautiful. We love it. When you do the St. Lawrence Seaway, you have salt life. So along the way, there's fisheries, and we've bought snow crabs like live, and we've had a sack and cooked them on the boat. And we've been to the lobster pound, and we have a box of lobsters, and we make those on the boat. And Prince Edward Island mussels, stuff like that's fun. And then when you go the Erie Canal way, there's a town called Little Falls, and you feel like you're on this magical little ride, and the town is right on the edge, and it's very pretty.
Now, so I'm not looking at a map, and I'm thinking in my mind, the Erie Canal then goes through to the Hudson River go by way to New York City per se, and then the other way would be going up through the St. Lawrence Seaway and end up, where do you end up on the East Coast there?
Yeah, so if you're coming out of the Great Lakes doing the St. Lawrence Seaway, the last lock is Montreal, and then you could visit Quebec, which Quebec has a lock to get into the marina.
Okay.
It's very cool. And then all these little fishing towns, and then through Prince Edward Island
Nova
and
Scotia area.
the Straits of Canso and Nova Scotia, and
Okay.
it's beautiful down through Maine, down.
So now we talked before the camera went on about the fact that there are busy times and slower times for a captain. Now, just by sheer understanding that a lot of people, especially in the north up here, put their boats in the spring and take them out in the fall, and then understanding that if somebody has a yacht, they may take it south to the Bahamas or Florida in the wintertime. So I'm assuming you're busy March, April, May, slow time, middle
So
of...
I'm lucky because I have a niche because I've worked here and I'm from here. I've also worked Caribbean, Bahamas, Europe, East Coast. So a lot of those boats are transitioning seasons where they're going to go. Crew change, repairs, go to the next season. So I can assist boat owners from here. Are you winter storing? I'll help you put it away. Or are we going somewhere else? Even if they don't need a full-time captain, I can relocate it for them. So my busy season is spring and fall, relocating down to Florida and Great Lakes, and I often fit the Bahamas in and do an owner's trip in the Bahamas. And then summer will be owner's trips, winter will be owner's trips. I do management of repairs and things too, but so kind of there's all the spring rush and excitement and too much work, and then mid-July, August is slower. Then it's a big push, move all the boats. Mid-November, December slower, and then back into the trips. And
Okay. Now, have you taken anything the opposite way and gone Chicago down the Mississippi?
only partial.
Okay.
So I've did Columbus, Kentucky, down the Tennessee town Bigby, down in Mobile, Alabama.
Okay.
It was very pretty.
Now, it seems like every, I'll say, area has its own set of issues or things to look at. Like, I'm just thinking in my mind, when you get into, say, a Lake Huron, a Lake St. Clair, Lake Huron, Lake Superior, depth isn't too much of an issue. Maybe Lake St. Clair, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But that's different if you're out in the open waters of, say, Lake Huron. Depth's not typically too much of a problem, probably.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go to the Bahamas, you probably really have to watch the depth finders.
Yeah, so when we do the Bahamas, we always have two sources. I have one on my tablet and then the boat's GPS, and I update their GPS first. And those are just references. Everything else is the natural eye, polarized sunglasses, and just watching the depths of blue, like the color hue. As it turns more white, it's very shallow.
Right.
So
like if you go in Lake Huron, can you sort of tell from your eyes where you're at as far as depth?
yeah, it's not as distinguished of a difference, but Lake Huron is another local knowledge. There's very large boulder rocks way far out, so we stay really far out.
Okay. Shipping channels. Typically, I'm assuming that if you've got a big boat, you're paying attention to shipping channels almost everywhere, probably.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we use the channels a lot, and then there's VTS, Vessel Traffic Security, in main ports, not all main ports, and we communicate with them coming into Halifax. We request permission to come in. They relay to us different info of other boats, which way they're going, their speed, and I also communicated with VTS here from Port Huron all the way down to the St. Clair Light, just on our St. Clair River, which would be boats over 20 meters. It's a requirement. A lot of people don't know that.
What about the fact that do you ever use a paper chart anymore?
Not often. I have them, but I do a big deep dive into everything I do, and I study it very deeply. So I use many references, and I will look at that too.
So when a captain goes in and charts the course of where you're going to go from a port to another port, are you going on a map system that's available to the public, or do you have a subscription for your service?
I have a subscription, but anyone can purchase it. But Navionics is wonderful today because it's satellite based.
Sure.
So if you're out of cell range, you still have it, and they update it constantly. A boat's GPS, you have to use an SD card and update it, and it's really just a computer drawing of a chart. So it's not
Right.
that accurate. It's just the best that they can do. And each chart, I used to use 3 different charts for the Bahamas, and all 3 showed different detail.
So you really got to be sharp on it and make sure you're
Just
aware of
doing
everything.
the best you can.
Now, do you get into having to deal with or check the engine rooms out on these boats?
Yeah, so every morning I check the oil in the engines, I check the transmission oil, I check the coolant, check for any leaks, anything off. Yeah, I just do a visual throughout the engine room, top up any oils or fluids.
Now, let's take an 80 or 100 foot yacht. I'm assuming there'd be 2 motors or more than that.
Usually 2,
Okay.
sometimes
2 big
3.
diesels.
Like the pods, those are popular. Sometimes there's 3.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we do hourly engine room checks, and we have a whole log, so we see when things are off. We use a temperature gun. We have a really good system.
So there's a lot of paperwork involved.
Mm-hmm.
When we say paperwork, it's probably not paper anymore. It's all on a laptop.
We do both.
Okay.
We do both, but it helps us identify things because things pop up all the time, and you have to work on stuff underway, or you lose steering, or you lose power, or something cuts off. We lost power on our generator in the St. Lawrence Seaway, which then lost steering, and we sucked up a rag. And we all saw a blue rag floating in. None of us said anything to each other, and then we're like, after we pull over, work on everything, look at everything, we all look at each other like, was it the blue rag?
Right. So that brings a question to mind. So if you've got 2 large, say, Caterpillar motors in a yacht, does a ship like that typically have a third one that is nothing but providing power for the ship itself?
No,
Okay.
no. Maybe something much larger than my license.
Okay. Because I know freighters
I know.
have that.
I know the cruise ships run with 4, and they work on 2 maintenance and then switch to the other 2.
Right. I know that it's separate from what you do, but I know that about a month or 2 ago, the Mark W. Barker, which was a new ship, ran aground down by Belle Isle.
Mm-hmm.
And typically they find out most of those scenarios there's such thing that something failed.
It's always a failure,
Yeah.
so you get all types of comments. Captain's going to lose its job. No, the captain was trying to avoid an accident, and because we log everything, we know when it went bad, and we find out why.
Right. Pretty easy to figure it out when you got all those different things you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there one place that you like going better than another?
To be honest, Lake St. Clair is my favorite. We have
Okay.
the most bays and restaurants and places to go and cuts. Second to that is the Bahamas. I'm very lucky. I've got to captain in 28 countries and clear in customs and immigration and do everything that's necessary to be in those places. But I love the Bahamas in here.
Now, the typical question that maybe your parents or other friends might ask that I'm going to ask is, as a young lady, do you get very much scenario where somebody says, yeah, I'm looking for the captain?
Yeah, sometimes, yeah.
And then they say, you're too young to be captain.
Yeah, people always love to say, like, very older guys, like 70 or when they'll say, are you 10? Like, they tease you, or where's the captain? But
Right.
yeah.
So it's now middle of July. How much, are you filled up for the fall yet?
No, so it's a very on-demand business.
Okay.
If they call and I don't answer, they're calling down
Somebody
the line.
else. Okay.
Or if they call, it's usually, are you available tomorrow or this or that? And if it's already owned, you can pretty much be sure to be true to what they're saying. If it still needs to be closed on, it never really goes as planned in the timing that they think.
Right.
So I work with them, but I know it's not in 3 days. It might be a week or 10 days.
Now, I would assume that if you worked with somebody in the spring, say, taking their yacht from, say, the Bahamas to New York, that to some degree, repeat business and repeat customers they may say, I want you in the fall to take said boat from New York back to the Bahamas?
Yeah, that could happen. A lot of the boat owners are changing it up. I mean, it's pretty amazing. They'll buy new ones every couple years, and
Sure.
the ones that have had them a long time have a long established crew. So that's when I come in as a relief captain. The crew, when they're full service in the season when the boat's there, and then when it's relocating, I relief and they take vacation.
Okay.
So it's kind of how it goes.
Now,
or if they get sick or something
Now,
like
when
that.
you're transporting something from, say, deep in the south to the north, do you typically have a mechanic with you?
Not typically. I'm the one that usually does it.
Okay.
But the dinner boat that we did, we had a crew of 8, and we had a designated engineer and 3 captains that were all involved in the engineering. So we had one person solely focused on that, and then we also helped.
Now let's talk about that movement of that ship. Where was it coming from and where was it going to?
So it was coming from New York City, and we had to use the St. Lawrence Seaway. Its height was 57 feet, so we were bringing it into Cleveland. And
Okay.
it's a long-established dinner boat business there, and they saw this opportunity with this boat, and they're moving on from their smaller dinner boat to that.
Okay. So that was probably a one-time thing unless they expand their operation to get from New York to Cleveland?
Yeah, just a
Okay.
one-time thing.
And then some of that stuff just requires logistics, like the height of the boat made it so you had to go one way and not the other?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And timing, when they need it moved, where I can get us through. I was able to get a special permissions pass to come through there in early spring. Also, the spring prior, I brought another passenger vessel into Toledo, and I got us a special permissions pass. So there's still snow on the side, and there's
Okay.
little ice pieces, icebergs coming down, but we know how to navigate it. We're from here, and I can get that to happen. I can get the boats into the Great Lakes sooner.
So it sounds like not only navigating the boat itself, but knowing how to navigate through the system of getting the proper permits and permissions.
Yeah, there's a lot of contacts. There's a lot of people in on my emails, and it's just a relationship that I've built over time that I can make it seamless.
Is this mainly with like Coast Guard or Coast Guard and the locks, or?
Yeah, it's the Coast Guard, it's Customs and Immigration, it's pollution control, stuff like that, ballast control.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, when you say ballast control, is that the Coast Guard or a section of the
That's
Coast Guard?
another section.
Okay.
So even though I don't travel with ballast on these boats, they still need to come inspect that there is no ballast,
Sure.
that we're not dumping, certain type of
Right.
organisms.
I know about that just from reading things, and for our viewers, ballast is common in freighters, and so they don't want somebody sucking in 100,000 gallons going up from the ocean and dumping that ballast in the Great Lakes, because then they
Yes.
got invasive species coming from one ecosystem to another, right?
Yeah, and I see the
Makes
reason
sense.
for it,
Makes sense. They say that's somewhat, I've just read some minor things, but that's maybe the thought of how some of these zebra mussels came to be in the Great Lakes, because they were not normally here years ago, I guess.
Yes, they can travel, but what I do for these passenger vessels is they have to have a certain inspection to operate as a passenger vessel.
Mhm.
And it will be an inspection from their local Coast Guard. But I start talking with them right after the sale of the boat or before to see what you're up against. So throughout the passage, we do engineering. We work on systems so the boat's ready to go and safe for the boat and the crew to get there. We update everything for the COI and go through the checklist. I do all the accounting and all the logistics. So there's quite a bit involved.
Okay. I'm guessing that you've taken boats some new boats too?
New boats are the worst, yes.
Because
They
things can go wrong because they
haven't had a real shakedown cruise.
Right.
And the delivery is really that. And they often frown upon the owner coming for the maiden voyage.
Right.
And we're constantly working on stuff or preparing a list for when it gets there for it to be worked on.
Punch list of getting these dozen things worked on, right? Yeah, bolt didn't get tightened and it's spewing, water or something like that.
Yeah, just all types of things not hooked up properly, not working properly. Nothing an owner should go through.
Right, right, especially with a new vessel.
Yeah, but
Okay.
something that's already been pre-owned has been fine-tuned and maintained usually.
Okay. At what point did you decide to be a captain?
Well, right out of high school, I knew I wanted to travel everywhere. I grew up traveling. I love traveling. I love the water. I was on the swim team. I was a competitive swimmer. I love languages. I love culture. All of that. And I was on the swim team in college, and I just kept feeling like I'm ready to go, to be more free to go. And then I got my jobs, and I still was ready to go. And then I had my own boat. I had 2 different boats, but I had them for about 8 years. And I was like, this isn't the only place, because you've seen waterways and boats everywhere. I want to go everywhere. So.
Have you gone to Alaska work-wise?
Not yet. I was offered. I took a boat from the Caribbean. We went up to like Antigua, St. Bart's, up to the Virgin Islands. We cut across the Panama Canal, and then we went up, and I got off in Costa Rica.
Okay.
But almost made it there one day.
And the world's so I mean, even within like North America, there's so many spots to go, right?
There's just so many.
Yeah. So do you have a map at home with a bunch of pins in it?
I basically have done like an X.
Okay.
I've been St. Thomas to the Azores to Gibraltar to France. Been all the way up, St. Lawrence Seaway up to here, and then all the way down to St. Lucia and through the Panama Canal up to Costa Rica. So I've did like a big plus sign.
Okay. How was the Panama Canal?
It was really cool. It's very red. The water's very red from like the soil, like everything being very red. Our category is they manned our ship for us. So we had a lot of crew on the boat and steel toe boots,
Okay.
blue workwear, high vis, and they were moving our boat through, and we also had a captain aboard with our captain moving us through. And it still has the way it started, where there's these carts, these cars, like rail cars, and then they'll send the lines out to us, and they pull the tension and they move us through the locks.
Really?
And one of them still had 2 guys rowing out in a wooden boat, handing us the line.
It's like you wouldn't think this day and age that would happen, right?
Yeah, but the rail cars pulled too tight in one of the locks and blew part of the boat out. These fair leads, these rollers, just flung. Could have killed somebody.
Yeah. Where to next?
Well, let's see. I did get a call from North Channel. I know that's close to home, and I've always wanted to go there, and I got asked to do a 2-week owner's trip there. So we'll see if that happens. I've been working with this broker and owner out of Erie, Pennsylvania for about 2 months now. He's buying a dinner boat from Seattle, and we'll ship it Seattle to Fort Lauderdale, and we'll bring it up into Lake Erie. And if that happens, I've hit all 3 main towns delivering their passenger vessels in.
Now let's talk about that. Seattle to Lauderdale.
Yeah.
And what is the best way to go?
Well, that will be put on a ship.
Okay.
Yeah.
And brought through the south?
So I think they're going to go through the Panama Canal.
Right.
And
Okay. And end up at, Lauderdale.
yeah.
Okay.
So that's what the broker quoted for that to be on a ship, and then for me to put together another big crew and bring it up. But this one can clear the heights in the Erie Canal.
Okay.
So that'll cut off 1,000 miles or more.
And how are the different systems of Erie versus the St. Lawrence Seaway? Is one quicker to get through?
Well, the St. Lawrence Seaway is quite longer. The Erie one's quicker, but Erie is more of just kind of showing up. And it's kind of like, hey, can we come in? You just call in the VHF, and then, oh, we're done for the day. Just pull over, or come on in. But the St. Lawrence Seaway is more scheduled, like, oh, 4:10, you're up in the lock.
Okay. It sort of makes sense with the volume in the St. Lawrence
It's just
Seaway.
more commercial there, and Erie's more pleasure.
Sure. I think what I'm going to have to do when I go home is I'm going to have to get on Google Maps and check out some of these spots, because it's very interesting too, is like looking at freighters that come by our door basically when they're heading south. Generally speaking, they're probably going overseas somewhere, the foreign based boats. So they're going up the St. Lawrence Seaway.
It's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Appreciate you coming by, and thanks James for recommending you and having you in here.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and it's very cool.
What do you got? What do you have? Is there anything scheduled for the fall specific yet, or?
Not yet, delivery-wise. Nothing is totally booked, but with James in the wood and boat business, and I'm also in that, we have the Boat the Blue show coming up, September 8th and 9th.
Okay, and where is it?
And that'll be in Port Huron. Okay. And I'll be a guest speaker. I've been invited a couple places, and I was invited to speak at the new Wrigley Center. And then the International Wood and Boat shows up north, Bay Harbor. So it's 1 week of events, different lakes and things we're all taking our boats to, and excited to be part of all that.
When's the Bay Harbor event?
The following weekend, I guess
September.
The 15th, 16th weekend.
Okay.
And that'll be our 1-year anniversary of our marriage, and we got married using our wooden boat. Okay. So I'm excited to do that.
Okay. So if we don't see you in your wooden boat, we'll see you somewhere along the way and captaining a boat. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Thanks for coming by.
Well, thank you.
Captain Nicole Christie. If you know of anybody else who would like to see on Channel 6 in the zone, phone number's there, 586-707-5811. This is number 63 in the books. Thank you very much. Thank you.